There are no opening statements. There are questions that were submitted by the audience and by the league, and by luck of the draw, Ms. Johnson goes first. This district consists of both urban and suburban areas with very different issues. How would you balance the needs of both communities within the 143rd?
Thank you very much to the League of Women Voters for having us here tonight. Thanks to everybody in the audience for being here and at home watching. It's amazing for our democracy. That's a fantastic question, and I thought a lot about it while I've been out on the doors talking to residents of both Norwalk and Westport in this district. It's true. Westport, the town of Westport, and the city of Norwalk have very different realities, and I know this firsthand by being on the Common Council since January 2020. I have the honor and the privilege of representing everybody in the city of Norwalk right now as an at-large member. But what that means is I have been, for almost 3 years, balancing this very issue. I live in Cranberry, I'm proud to live in Cranberry, and I know that District D also has Silvermine. These are areas that are very similar to the 143rd in Westport, Old Hill, and that area down Saugatuck. I think that what matters is that these values that we share about making sure that we build a Connecticut that works for everyone, especially our children, especially the next generations, that we make sure that we focus on education and jobs, and that we focus on making sure that we have reproductive freedom. These are the things that I've heard on doors across the district, no matter what neighborhood, that we all share, that I think that we really do have in common to work toward these common goals. So how we're going to do this is together. And I think that that's also very important. This is a district full of Democrats, unaffiliated, independents, and Republicans. And that means that we will work together, making sure that you know that I am open, my door is open to you, I am accessible, I'm responsive, and that's something I brought to the council work all this time in Norwalk, and I will bring it to those folks in Westport. We need to strengthen our public schools, that's a shared value. We need to make sure we have jobs. We have a workforce crisis with 100,000 unfilled jobs. We need to make sure that we can build workforce development to fill those jobs. That affects both the town of Westport and Norwalk. And as well, this constitutional amendment for Roe that we've been hearing about, I will propose that at the state level.
All right, thank you. Ms. Hampton.
Yes, thank you. Oh. Hello? Okay. Yeah. Thank you for the question. Yes, Norwalk and Westport are two completely different communities. But you know what? As I've been going door to door, I've been hearing the same issues that everyone's dealing with right out of this pandemic and the inflation that everyone is going through, right? It's all about affordability. Gas prices being so high. Why is food so high, people ask me? You know? Why are our communities not safe anymore? Why is there no law and order in our communities? And I support the police and have their endorsement. And I think law and order is well needed in both communities. And a lot of people talk about the car theft, you know, and how that law needs to be amended because it's like a slap on the wrist and then people just continue to steal their cars. That's a real problem. And then we have the legalization of marijuana that my opponent and her fellow Common Council members are implementing in our communities. And it's a real problem because the recovery from cannabis use is 5 times, if not more, than the supposedly revenue that we're going to get back from the state. So, I mean, across the board, they're completely different neighborhoods, but you know what? At the end of the day, they have the same issues that they're dealing with. Thank you.
All right. Anything further?
Yes.
For rebuttal, yes.
Yes. I know that here in Connecticut, we have inflation issues that are caused by global economic issues as well. That is something that we need to leverage our federal delegation to really work on, but it's also something at the state level we can provide relief to people in our district in working hard in Hartford to leverage these tax credits. I'm really honored to have worked with our public service, especially our police. I have been proud to earn the endorsement of the State Police Union recently, and I also have been really proud to work on Public Safety Committee, working with our first responders and our police here in Norwalk. The tragedy in Bristol reminds us of how important it is to not only support our police, but to make sure our communities are safe by working together. That is something that's on our minds right now. We have police that are every day putting themselves in harm's way. We need to make sure that we hold our elected leaders accountable when police are experiencing that kind of violence. Thank you.
I'm afraid it's time. Anything further, Ms. Hampton?
Yes, I just want to, second that, yes, supporting those, protecting those who protect us is very important when it comes to the police department. And my opponent was endorsed by the Working Families Party who wants to defund the police.
All right, the next question goes to Ms. Hampton first. Connecticut is water-rich with almost 6,000 miles of rivers and streams. However, in many of our cities and towns, including Norwalk, the water is unhealthy in places and fails to meet basic Clean Water Act standards. Stormwater pollution is a primary culprit. While the state has a program to address this runoff, water in many municipalities still does not meet Clean Water Act standards. How should the legislature ensure that progress is made cleaning up these bodies of water so that the residents can drink safely?
Yes, thank you for the question. And thinking about this topic and climate change as a whole, exactly what I tell my daughter every day. We all need to care for the earth. We need to throw out trash, recycle. I worry when people run their sprinklers all day. And definitely the raw sewage issue in Norwalk. And, our state is now holding us accountable to fix that problem. Let's tax the corporate polluters. There needs to be fines in place for people who are purposely causing harm. So as far as, changing this problem and everything, this is a real need. We know that the world's heating up. But we've been talking about this. We've been having conversations about all of this since the 1970s. No one is denying climate change, and I don't know anyone who doesn't want clean air, clean water, and safe food production.
All right, Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. I would like to address what my opponent said about the Working Families Party. It is a party for working people. It is a party for people who put in an honest day's work. And I do not support defund the police. In fact, I support our police. There was an insurrection where a law enforcement official lost his life in the line of duty, protecting our capital, protecting our democracy itself. This is an insurrection my opponent denies happened.
Hold off, audience. Hold off.
I'd like to now address the question about climate change. I have been absolutely at the forefront of working in our city to make sure that climate change is something that is not only something that is prominent in our agenda on the council, but is something as a city that we can collectively harness all of our interests. I know so many people are interested in making sure we pass down a cleaner earth our children deserve to have, with, yes, clean air, clean water. But that Clean Water Act is at threat right now, with the Supreme Court potentially having a decision coming up this fall, just like this past session where they gutted the Clean Air Act. And it's only because of the legislature in Hartford that we were able to have the Connecticut Clean Air Act. I will go to Hartford to make sure we have a Connecticut Clean Water Act. What I'll also do is leverage what I've done on the council. I proposed and garnered support for our city's very first climate action plan. That is a passion I have, and that is something that I will continue to bring here into our district. What we need funding from Hartford. There's a lot of federal funding going to come down the line. So you need somebody who's able to, and has a track record of advocating for this. I am your person. I've been honored to be endorsed by the Connecticut League of Conservation Voters and the Sierra Club of Connecticut. I am the environmental champion in this race, and that is something that I will promise you I will work very hard on in Hartford. It means also that we get off our dependence on fossil fuels, which puts money in our families' pockets.
Time.
Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hampton, anything further?
Oh, yes. So, towards my opponent's statement, of course, I denounce what happened on January 6th, but once again, this is a question to divide good people, and when I'm going door to door, not one person is talking about January 6th. They're all worried about high gas, buying groceries, being taxed at the highest rate in the nation, and getting back the least amount. How about that? The idea that marijuana being smoked freely in our communities and the damage it will bring with no money for prevention until year 3. We need to address the true needs of our community. Our government needs to stop being divisive because we deserve better.
All right. Ms. Johnson, anything further?
Yes, I'd like to rebut that. Thank you. I just for the record, because I believe the people, the voters of the 143rd District deserve to know the beliefs of the people they're voting for on November 8th. Do you deny saying that there was no insurrection? That is the question I have for my opponent. I think the voters deserve to have that on record. What I would also like to say in rebuttal to this is that, you know, we have an opportunity in this district right now to make sure that we lift each other up. And I think we all feel weary of the divisiveness. I know we do, and I'm hearing that on talking with the community as well. But we're being divided in a way that's unprecedented because of a lack of civility, a lack of seeing each other as neighbors. And so I promise you that I always will listen with an open heart and listen with open ears to make sure that I represent all of you. That is something that I promise. Thank you.
All right, next question goes to Ms. Johnson first. What would you do to ensure that Norwalk and Westport receive a fair share of money coming back to our schools with the educational cost-sharing formula?
That's a very good question. And as somebody with a PhD in education, I have a very important stake in our education system. I'm a former educator, and I'm very proud to be endorsed by many of our great education associations here in Connecticut, including Connecticut Education Association, the AFT, as well as retired teachers. I have over a decade of experience in education. I know that the ECS formula is flawed. I know it's a formula. So we can also change formulas. Now, whether there's the political will to do so is another question. I have ideas about how we can change it. I think we need to weigh our multilingual learners higher. I think we need to weigh free and reduced lunch higher. I also think it'd be valuable to have a variable that takes account of intra-city wealth disparity. But frankly, ECS is not the solution to this problem. It can't be the only solution. We need to make sure in Norwalk that we keep our alliance district status. That's something that is really helping us right now. We need to also make sure that Westport, they want to make sure they have, for those in the audience that you know this from Westport, Staples was just rated the #1 high school in the entire state. So I think that for them, I think it's a matter of valuing our teachers. These are experts, these are professionals, in Norwalk, in Westport. And I think that we need to make sure that we support them in the valuable work they do every day. So what that means is very innovative funding solutions need to be addressed in Hartford, and I am that person to bring that expertise up to Hartford. I will be a champion for our schools and fight in Hartford to make sure not only we have funding for our school facilities, but have things in the classroom that we need, have the STEM education, have family navigators, I have experience making impact here on the City Council, making sure we fund these family navigators, we fund Chromebooks during the pandemic, we fund Wi-Fi for students at home so they can keep learning, and I will bring that passion and advocacy to Hartford for you. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hampton, same question.
Yes, thank you for the question. I think we need to ask for an audit when it comes to education, right? Because we need to follow the money. Why, if our kids are being redistricted to another district, are we paying that district as well as Norwalk? We had over $300,000 last year that was unaccounted for. And after we get that audit, I think we need to make sure that we bring the basics back to education. If our kids can't read or do math, what's the sense of social emotional learning if they can't even graduate? So I think, the real issue here with education, especially in Norwalk and Westport, is we need to bring the basics back. Make sure our kids can read and do math.
Anything further? Ms.
Yes,
Johnson? Yes.
Thank you. I believe that we not only need to teach the 3 R's, but we need to teach science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Our young people deserve to be given all the support they need for jobs that we literally don't know exist yet because technology is changing so rapidly. One thing I will say is that when we're talking about making sure that our students have social emotional learning, what we're talking about is anti-bullying programs. What we're talking about is character education. We're talking about leading with kindness and creating the next generation of citizen leadership. And I think that's very important. I've been proud to support those initiatives on the council. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hampton, anything further?
I just want to add that I am a firm believer that mental health is a very important issue, right? And it always needs to be addressed. However, social emotional learning in our schools is more geared towards sexual ideology and grooming of our children. Thank you.
All right, next question goes to Ms. Hampton first, and it's about the police accountability bill. What is wrong with it specifically, and what is good about it? And would you, in the course of answering, deal with the issue of the qualified immunity for police?
Wow, what a great question. The police accountability bill, right? So the fact that a police officer could be sitting right next to someone who's smoking a blunt and they cannot pull them over unless they witness them hit something, that's a huge problem to me, right? I sit on our local prevention council, so now we're legalizing marijuana, right? We're bringing storefronts to the Norwalk community, but we don't even have a way to test folks on whether or not they have a DUI. Why would you endanger our community? It's all about our kids, right? We're here to support our kids. But if you don't allow the people that protect us to be able to protect us properly, to have the proper resources and policies in place to do their job, that's not good for anyone. And I don't know one person in our community that does not want the best for their children.
All right, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you. I will, first of all, I must address what was just said. I think it's unconscionable to call our teachers groomers. I think it's a disservice to them as a profession, and I think it undervalues deeply their contributions to our community. Moving on to the police accountability bill, I'll tell everybody what I told the state police union, and I am proud to earn their endorsement. I will not support legislation that repeals the police accountability bill. Rather, I'm willing and wanting to make sure we're in open dialogue, that they know that they can always talk with me about these issues. And to make sure, and make no mistake, I have talked with folks in the community about this bill. Some of the provisions in the bill, people say will help them feel safer. And I've also talked to our law enforcement. And many of them aren't quite sure what this actually means in their day-to-day life on the job. But what this means is that I'm very willing to open to amending this bill to improve it based on what we know now would work and doesn't work. But I think it's really important that we involve our community policing divisions in Norwalk and Westport. And as your next state rep, I promise I will talk with them, their unions, to have open communication about what is working, what isn't. We also need to make sure that we talk to our criminal justice experts. There are going to be unintended effects of this bill, and even unintended effects about proposed changes. So we need to draw on our expertise in this state to make sure that if we're going to amend it, we do it in a way that actually improves it. I also think that with regard to this police accountability bill, we need to make sure, with specific to qualified immunity, that this is something that, again, we are in conversation with officers, with their unions, and with the community. One of the goals of this police accountability bill was to make communities and police come together to work better together. I think that was an intended effect. Again, we have to revisit that. But if the community and the police are working better and having greater communication, that is a good value. Thank you.
That's time. Any rebuttal or extension?
Yes, for the record, I was not calling our teachers groomers. I was referring to the one-party rule curriculum that is being pushed upon our teachers. I love teachers. But back to the qualified immunity, I don't think that if cops, get in a situation, right, that their personal house and savings and everything should be in jeopardy. That's so unfair, And as far as community policing, that's so important. I'm glad you brought that up. I totally agree. However, community policing has been around for years in Norwalk, at least the past 6 to 7 years that I know of that I've been working with the police in community policing. So yes, that's very important, and there are definitely changes that need to be made to this police accountability bill.
All right, anything further, Ms. Johnson?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Ms. Johnson first. Do you consider Connecticut's elections fair and secure? If yes, how, and if not, why not? And if not, what should the legislature do to make them fairer or more secure?
That's a very important question given the national landscape right now. I just, by the way, think that I will be voting yes on the ballot amendment and initiative this November 8th because I think it's very important to make sure that we do have access to early voting. I do believe we have fair and secure elections in Connecticut, and that's because we have a very strong Secretary of State's office, and we have a value for democracy. We have a value for participatory democracy in this state, and that's something I am proud of and I will defend because I believe in my very core that this is one of the important parts of being an American, but also being a patriot, is that we all have a voice at the ballot box. Now, other things that I think that we need to focus on are to make sure that we have a rhetoric that I think needs to be held accountable. If people are accusing our elections of not being fair, I think that undermines our democracy. We have to have faith and trust in these institutions. And when it comes to the early voting initiative, I think more participation in democracy is only better, right? There are people right now getting on the train down the street before voting starts. They get back from New York after the polls close. They can't vote on election day. We have people who can't find childcare. They may not be able to vote on election day. This is not a participation, this is not how we can have participation in our democracy that's full and expansive, right? We should have folks that if they have the ability to vote early, that means that they can participate, and I think that's absolutely important. Each one of our voices matters, so each one of our votes need to matter too. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hampton?
Yes, I do believe that we have free and fair elections, and I support early voting, as long as it doesn't cost the municipality too much money, and safety of voting is put in place. Anything that would increase voter turnout is a good thing. And and as far as IDs though, for voting, I do support laws that require voter ID. If you need an ID to get on a plane, pick up a prescription, or to take out a library book, you absolutely need one to go vote. And then, and another thing I want to address.
Somebody fix that mic, could you fix that? Place your mic.
Timers hold off.
Did you see some batteries? There were some batteries sitting here.
Oh, thanks.
Sorry.
No worries.
Can you guys just share a mic and I'll...
Sure, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you,
I
timers.
support absentee ballots, especially if we're honest about why we need one. If someone is requesting an absentee ballot for a harvesting purpose, then I don't agree with that, and they should be prosecuted.
All right, rebuttal?
Oh, yes, thank you. With regard to absentee ballots, I think it's very important that we understand some of the reasons why people might need one. Some folks literally may not be able to leave their homes because of medical conditions. Some folks still are in a pandemic, and some folks may be afraid that they have pre-existing conditions or somebody with, an autoimmune issue at home, and they don't want to bring COVID back by having to go to vote right now. And I think that that's really important to have these provisions for our absentee ballots as well. Thank you.
All right, anything further, Ms. Hampton?
Just to say again that I support absentee ballots.
All right, thank you both. Next question goes to Ms. Hampton first. Child care workers are often termed the workforce behind the workforce, but capacity in Connecticut is down 25%, and workers are leaving the field in droves because of low pay, and yet child care is too expensive for many families to afford. How should Hartford address this crisis?
Well, I think the programs that Hartford has in place to help folks with child care should definitely have an increase in income qualifications. Maybe some of our income qualifications are set too low for the average working person to be able to take advantage of those initiatives. And there's other things that can be done too, but I think helping the working parent, is a huge incentive and initiative that we need to address.
Okay, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I think you gave me one, so we're good.
Oh.
Thank you. I think, yes, that's working for you. I feel very passionately about early child care and early childhood education as a former educator myself. I've been lucky to go on child care center visits in Norwalk as a council member and as a candidate as well. And I know that some of the work I've done on the council has been directly impactful in our child care opportunities and landscape here in the city. We've supported through funding on the council and the committee that I chair, the Community Services Committee, grant funding into our early childhood centers that makes this type of learning and this type of being ready for school a possibility for young people, little ones in our city. That's something I feel very passionate about, and will take that passion with me to Hartford. This is an issue of the workforce. Again, for me, it's about education, it's about jobs, and it's about reproductive freedom. But when we're talking about jobs, these jobs are absolutely important because we know that when we lift up women, and most of our early child care facilities are run by women, we lift up families. And when we lift up families, we lift up our community. Now, I think there's innovative models, including All Our Kin, that not only help women create a childcare center that impacts the next generations, but help actually create their own small business. So I think that this is a really important thing. We are going to need to give not only workforce training and development, but we're also going to need to make sure to fund these startup, nonprofit daycare centers and childhood education centers that are especially run by women and women of color, so that there is a pathway to making sure that they have a stable income, that they can take care of our next generation, give them all the opportunities and success that they need to be ready for school on day one. I was really proud, one of our centers here in Norwalk has students reading at the age of 3. I mean, that is what we've got to do all over the district, and these will provide jobs and education for our families. Thank you.
Yeah. Ms. Hampton, anything further?
Yeah, I definitely agree with what my opponent just stated. However, only to support women of color would be racist. I think we need to be inclusive and support everyone.
All right, anything further, Ms. Johnson?
Oh, yes, please. Not to be misunderstood, that is not my suggestion at all. I said all women need this access and this opportunity. However, women of color are often those who are least able or underrepresented in these opportunities. So I think it's very important that we make sure that, you know, women who are underrepresented in these fields have the opportunity to build this personal dream of theirs, just to be clear. Thank you.
All right. Next question goes to Ms. Johnson first, and I'm going to go...
Microphone, please.
All right, can you hear me?
No.
This is not on battery. This should be working. All right.
Okay.
Is that any better? Okay. I'm going to go back to the affordable housing question. It's going to go to Ms. Johnson first. Affordable housing is a significant quality of life issue in the area. What solutions do you propose to expand affordable housing and ensure that all Connecticut's municipalities provide more affordable housing options? And again, on this one, can you address the issue of 830G?
Absolutely, absolutely. And given that this is a district of both Norwalk and Westport, I'll address it for Norwalk and Westport as well, with a particular focus on Norwalk because we're here tonight, home in Norwalk. Now, 830G and local control. First off, 830G is a 30-year-old law. So I'm open to amending it. I'm open to taking a look at it to see what's working and what isn't. It is a 30-year-old law. Now in Norwalk, as we know, I believe earlier in the night was quoted at 13%. I think it's somewhere 12, we'll say somewhere in there. % of our housing stock is affordable, which means that we are exempt from 830G here in Norwalk. Now in Westport, they have what has been called one of the best affordable housing plans in the state right now. They have a moratorium on 830G in Westport, but they have a plan, and it's been called a very good plan. Here in Norwalk on the council, I was in early conversations with my colleagues about our affordable housing plan here in Norwalk, and my colleagues on the Affordable Housing Ad Hoc Committee in the council are working diligently with city staff. We're creating a affordable housing trust, which we're going to vote on soon in ordinance, and I'm proud to vote on that. That's going to make sure that we have a trust that can't be touched for the general fund to make sure that we put money into affordable housing here in Norwalk. Our plan is in process and in progress here in Norwalk, and I think that the local input is so important because, as we know, our state is diverse. Fairfield County has very unique issues in housing, and Norwalk and Westport have definitely different issues in housing as well. So making sure that we have housing is going to be a fundamental issue, and how we do it will take into account this local input will be very important. Input from the entire district matters, and every voice matters on this. For me, what's very important is making sure affordable housing is green. I have been maintaining this ever since I joined the council. I think we can have both green housing that's affordable, and that's actually going to really help residents because your utility bill will be lower if you have green living, if you have green housing, energy efficient appliances. So I really am a proponent of that. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hampton.
Yes, thank you for the question. So 830G, this bill definitely needs to be amended, okay? Because it's not one size fits all when it comes to affordable housing. Yes, affordable housing is very important to have a thriving community. However, like it was mentioned before, Norwalk already has 13%, so why do we continue to build? You know, if we're talking about climate control and green spaces, we're getting rid of all our green spaces. So this bill, I mean, I can't say, the fact that for senior citizens, one unit only counts as a half a person is absurd, okay? And anything built, I think it's like 20 something years ago, doesn't even count. for that municipality, even if it was renovated. So there's a bunch of stuff in this bill that needs to be amended, or we could just rip it up and start brand new.
All right, anything further?
Oh, yes, I'd just like to rebut one point. I would say be careful what we wish for if we rip up 830G and start over, because I have heard that there are some more extreme proposals that are being offered in other parts of the state. So I think that it might be more important for us to take stock of where this is now and not just try to throw out and start over. Thank you.
All right, Ms. Hampton, anything further?
Yeah, we just need to bring local control back to our municipality.
All right, there will be time for one other question before we get to closing statements, and I'm going to do the hot button issue of abortion again. What is your position on the right of privacy of the individual to make reproductive choices? Would you change Connecticut's safe harbor abortion rights law, and if so, how? And this goes to Ms. Hampton first.
So thank you for the question. The law is the law, you know. This is a question to divide good people. A woman's right to choose in Connecticut is confided into law. I'm a mother, I chose to be. Everyone has the right to choose their own path. Thankfully, a woman's right to choose is not a jeopardy in our state. I've been going door to door for months, and people aren't talking about Roe versus Wade. They're talking about affordability, gas prices, public safety, education and parental rights, and whether they should pay their light bill or buy groceries. We need to address the true needs of our community. Our government needs to stop being divisive. We deserve better.
All right, Ms. Johnson.
I agree that, to me, actually, reproductive freedom is an economic issue. Yes, I'm hearing on the doors, we have inflation, we have cost of living issues. People are buying one bag of groceries that used to buy two. Cost of gas is up. But we also have, under threat, with what's happened with the Supreme Court, fear, worry that I and all other women won't be able to make decisions about our futures. I mean, this is an economic issue. And so this, don't believe people when they tell you that it's settled. Because what we have here is potentially on the horizon, a national abortion ban coming out of the federal Congress. What that's going to do is take our safe harbor law, which I absolutely support and would have voted for if I was in the legislature. It's going to take it and actually render it really under threat. Like, we need to codify Roe in our state constitution. I will do that, I will sponsor that, I will support that, and I am your Planned Parenthood Votes Connecticut and Now Connecticut endorsed abortion rights champion, and I will fight for you on this issue. This is a matter of determining our own futures. This is a matter for the next generations to have the rights that I was born into and now are under threat. And I think that we need to understand that in cases of supporting this current law, we don't have people in Hartford supporting it. We don't. Every few years, we're getting somebody who proposes a bill to chip away at what we already have. It is under threat in Hartford, okay? So all individuals seeking public office right now, I think, need to answer the question of whether or not they will support a state constitutional amendment strengthening and defending Roe in Connecticut. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Hampton, any rebuttal?
You know, you guys keep harping on the issue that has already been settled, okay? It's already codified into the Connecticut state law. You know, you can keep harping on it, if that makes you feel good, then that's fine. But the reality is, when I go door to door, no one is talking about Roe versus Wade, okay? They want to know why Ned Lamont is taxing them out of their houses. They want to know why Democratic establishment isn't providing the services that we're paying for, so they say. They want to know why gas is so much, why food is so high, why there's no law and order in their communities. We need to address these concerns in our communities and stop letting the government be divisive, because we deserve better.
All right, anything further, Ms. Johnson?
Yes, thank you. What is divisive is rolling back precedent on a Supreme Court decision. What's divisive is making families worry about their economic future because they can't make a decision about their future because it's been taken away from them. We cannot roll these rights back. We have to be a firewall in Connecticut because these are Connecticut values. It has been settled. Why has it been brought up? This is a fight my grandmother's generation fought, my mother's generation fought, I fought when I was in my 20s, and here we are again, and I will continue fighting, because this is about freedom, the liberty to pursue your own happiness. That's what this is about. We cannot roll back these rights. Do not believe people when they tell you this is settled, because it is under threat, and I will fight for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I am told that we have time for one more question before the closing. This one goes to Ms. Johnson first. How much of the state's surplus is due to capital gains versus how much from COVID funds? And as the COVID money dries up, how should we balance the budget?
That's a really good question, because on the council I have been in front and center trying to make decisions on behalf of all of us about what we're going to do with this COVID funding. And I can tell you that this funding has been instrumental for us on the local level so that we don't have to raise taxes as much as we otherwise would. That we can actually keep taxes stable because of it. First, the Recovery Act coming in, and now ARPA. I think that, you know, the idea of capital gains for me means that what we really, it could be this like, really it's like a false choice, right? We have a rainy day fund. We have a rainy day fund that is in excess, right? And what we need to do is make smart drawdowns on that rainy day fund to pay our pension obligations, to make sure that we have a balanced budget, to make sure that we can actually invest in our children's future without raising our taxes on the local level. I think that's a really good use of the federal funding coming down through the states. Lastly, I don't want to give our children a bill they don't deserve. So I think a really good and smart drawdown on these surpluses can do that. And I think we've actually made really good fiscally responsible decisions at the City of Norwalk, and many of my colleagues in Hartford have enabled us to do that because of this funding. The mix of federal and state funding has made such a difference for us here in the city, and I see that difference. We can pass it on to families, and that's exactly what we've done. We've passed it on through the Community Services Committee, mental health care, addiction services, school funding, Chromebooks for students, trauma-informed care. We've passed it on to the community in ways that have made such an impact, and I think that those are really good uses for our surplus. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Hampton, same question.
You know, I hear, I don't mean to chuckle, but, you know, just listening to my opponent, we get taxed so much money, right? And there's all these services that they're telling us that they're going to provide, but they just never provide them, you know? And they're saying that we're paying for them. Why do our taxes on everything continue to go up? You know, there's this huge surplus. The COVID funding and the federal money, that was all used to bail us out. That's not something that Harvard accomplished on its own. That's why we have a surplus, because we were bailed out by the federal government, okay? And the COVID money, our state didn't even spend the whole COVID money. And we sent it back to the federal government. So again, I think we need an audit of all this money. Where is the money going? You know? If they're saying we're spending it and the people in the community are not seeing it, that's a problem. We need an audit.
All right, anything further on this?
Oh, yes, thank you. Just to respond, I see it in our community here in Norwalk in the small business loans that entrepreneurs get, the Kiva funding that we've passed through the council to make sure that women and minority-owned businesses are able to start up here. I think, you know, just today in the hour, a report came out that we are really at pace to have an outstanding year for entrepreneurs. Like, we're at really good levels of startups in this state. And I think that there's entrepreneurial spirit here in Norwalk that we've been able to jumpstart through this federal funding. That is something I am dedicated to fighting for, because small businesses are the heart and soul of our communities. You know, when I was coming up, a small business made all the difference for me to make sure I could have my ends meet, I got health care, and it gave me a chance to really follow my dreams of getting an education. So I think that that's something we owe everybody the opportunity to have too. So that's where this money is going. Thank you.
All right, anything further, Ms. Hampton?
Yeah, you know, I worked on the community care team in Norwalk Hospital for about 5.5 years. And, you know, we definitely saw the need in the community and did not see the money that supposedly came down funded to our community members. You know, and I think that's funny. You know, small businesses are important. And that's why I took the CBIA pledge to defend them and come up with, you know, common sense policies to help small businesses, unlike my opponent who did not take the pledge. So yeah, small businesses are very important.
All right, thank you. That ends the question period. Timers, we now go to the 2-minute closing statements. By luck of the draw, Ms. Hampton goes first.
Awesome. All right, so first off, thank you to the League of Women Voters, and thank you to everyone coming out tonight and the viewers, because it's a very important election. My name is Nicole Hampton, and here's what I am for. I'm for public safety inclusive of everyone. We need to restore safety in our community, from the youngest to the oldest. We need to stop dividing Connecticut like my opponent's party has been doing for years. All work for affordability. I think we should eliminate the meal tax. Eliminate new taxes such as diesel and truck tax. Expand property tax credit. Extend gas holiday. I'm for parental rights and bringing the basics back to our educational curriculum. We need annual audits to make sure buildings are secure and we have enough cameras inside and out to protect our kids. We need more SROs, at least one for every school, and frankly, we need to bring back all the school drills. I'm so grateful for our schools we have, but I'm also worried about some of the other issues we're facing, whether it's safety in schools or the fact that we might have drugs on our playgrounds with the legalization of marijuana. I want you to know that I will fight and care for the retired and elder population. I wonder who's looking out for them. I have and I will. It breaks my heart that some community members have to decide whether to pay their light bill or to buy groceries. That's just not right. We need change. This November, we have a chance to save what's good about Connecticut. So when you go vote, either by absentee ballot or at the polls, I want you to ask yourself, who do I trust? The candidate who will fight to reduce the cost of living? The candidate who will advocate to keep your family safe at night? The candidate who will fight for parental rights? The answer to all three is simple, Nicole Hampton. I'm Nicole Hampton, and I'm asking for your vote November 8th for State Representative of the 143rd.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for bringing us all together in conversation, everyone watching at home, everyone here. This is such an important part of our democracy. Thank you. This is an important election, and this is an election for our children's future. This November 8th, we have a choice. Can our children have a future of their own creation, or are they going to have to live in someone else's past handed down to them? I bring compassion and respect to the work I do on the council, and I've delivered results to the people of our city for almost 3 years now. This compassion is something I learned growing up in the Midwest. Most of what I learned that's true to me, I learned from my grandmother. She was a hard worker. She worked on the farm, she worked as a waitress, she worked in the toothbrush factory on the line, and one of my favorite stories of hers is that her brothers called up to her in the farmhouse because they got stuck in the mud in their truck. So of course, they called her, she put up on her boots, went downstairs and pushed them out of the ditch. I will pull my boots up for you, Norwalk. That's what I've been doing. Now, this work hard and give back values is what I bring to everything I do. And so on the Norwalk Common Council, what I've done and been very proud of over the past few years, there are 3 particular things that have been initiatives of mine. I proposed and garnered support for our city's first climate action plan. This is so that we can help homes, people, residents, businesses in our most affected areas prevent possible flooding coming down the line, make sure that we mitigate some issues. In this post-pandemic reality where we had housing insecurity, I worked to make sure that veterans, persons with disabilities, and LGBTQ folks were included in our non-discrimination protections. And I ushered through $1.5 million of ARPA funding into our nonprofits, directly into our communities for mental health and addiction services. I'm your neighbor, I'm a proud homeowner in Cranberry, and I hope to earn your vote on November 8th. Republicans, independents, unaffiliated, I will represent you too. I will be, literally reporting to you. You are my boss. Find me on your ballot November 8th and vote Dominique Johnson. Thank you.
Thank you.